It's Rodeo at the Cinch World's Toughest Rodeo, January 10th and 11th at Wells Fargo Arena. It's rodeo and a whole lot more. Come early for autographs, pony rides, and more. See more action, the best entertainment, and be part of the fun. It's too great to wait. Get tickets now at HiVTix.com. It's wild, it's Western, it's pro rodeo at the Cinch World's Toughest Rodeo, January 10th and 11th.
Hello and welcome into the Channel Seed Studios for Bigger Than 12 on Iowa Everywhere. You are listening to this on Wednesday, November 27th. We're recording this on Tuesday night, literally right after the college football playoff rankings were released about 5 minutes ago, and we were waiting for the rankings. We were sitting here talking, and I said, I honestly don't think I'm going to have too many opinions on this. I kind of knew what to expect, and it blew my expectations away. I'm going to have some thoughts. We'll get to that in just a minute. I'm Jake Brend, co-host of Bigger Than 12, joined by Derek Duke in the Channel Seed Studios. Derek, how are you doing, my friend?
Doing great as always, man. The football's been fantastic, and it seems like all hell is broken loose in the Big 12, but the one complaint I do have is that I have yet to experience that football weather down here in South Texas until today. It's finally getting in the 60s, and it's about damn time. I am tired of the 9.5 months of summer. It's what it's felt like. I felt like my AC has never stopped running. Bring me some of that Iowa weather, man. Can you send it down here a little bit?
Oh, yeah. We've been in the 40s. We're going to hit the 20s, even the teens this weekend. It's going to be a cold weekend in Ames, but it's great football weather, as you said. It's great Thanksgiving weather. Derek, are you a green bean casserole guy?
110%. That's like one of the best sides you can have. Oh, come on. Sometimes put maybe a little jalapenos on there.
Nah, I'm good.
Some onions. It's so good.
I'm anti green bean casserole.
Oh, come on.
Brings nothing to the table. Waste of space.
You can't crap on my Dots take and then say you hate green bean casserole on Thanksgiving. I don't think it works like that.
Nah.
Come on.
Aiden, you have any thoughts?
I'm not a green bean casserole guy either.
Let's go. I knew I could
Derek,
count on you.
do you think that maybe you're the problem?
I knew I could count on you, Aiden.
You're kidding me. That's like the best side. Like, it's like green bean casserole and dressing is like the best thing you could have with your turkey.
Just give me a lot of turkey, a lot of stuffing, some mashed potatoes, some fruit salad.
I ride with Jake. Some corn.
Oh, yeah. Some Iowa sweet corn.
What's up with the fruit salad?
It's a great compliment to the rest of the dish. I love Thanksgiving. This is quickly approaching my favorite week of the year. The first weekend of March Madness still has my number one, but I honestly didn't think that week could be touched, but this week is quickly getting really close to it. Where does the week of Thanksgiving rank amongst your weeks?
I don't know. I wouldn't say I like Thanksgiving. It's great. It's probably one of the better holidays. I mean, the food obviously is fantastic. It's like the best time to get a good meal. I don't know. Sports-wise, for me, I don't know if I'd put it up there. There's probably a week in October, I think, where there's like you got baseball, basketball, you've got the World Series, NBA starting, you've got NFL, you've got college football. So to me, that's probably one of my favorite weeks is in that October range. So, I mean, or the start of Labor Day is always one of my favorites too, because it's always the start of the college football season. So either one of those, but
I don't know. This week it's got Thanksgiving, it's got the infamous holiday Blackout Wednesday. Just, I don't know if you ever heard of that, but tomorrow night, I that might be just a younger person name for it, but tomorrow night I'll go hit the brewery and a couple local bars with all the old high school buddies, reconnect. You got feast week, and I didn't even mention any of the football yet. You've got high stakes Friday, Saturday, and then just a little or not an appetizer, just a little dessert of the NFL Sunday. Like I absolutely love this week, but we're not here to talk about the week of Thanksgiving. We're here to talk about football. But before we talk about football in our 12-pack, we'd like to thank our presenting sponsor, WealthCharter Retirement Planning and Tax. It is a good time to go see Tim Hawkins and his team. It's probably the most expensive time of year, buying presents, buying gifts, buying food, paying for trips to go see family. Make sure that all of your finances are in check, and there's no better place to do it than WealthCharter Retirement Planning and Tax. Again, Tim Hawkins and his team in Ankeny will take care of you to make sure that your budget, your finances are in the best spot for your stage of life. You can go to WealthCharterRetirement.com to schedule an appointment at their Ankeny office. Let's bring Aiden in for the 12-pack.
Let's get started. Jake, you alluded to it already. Thoughts on this week's college football playoff rankings?
We're doing this so immediately that I don't really have notes, so I'm just going to pull up the rankings again and get re-angry at it. So I'll read it off. As far as the Big 12 goes, we'll go bottom to top. Colorado, 25. Kansas State is 24. BYU, 19. Iowa State, 18. Arizona State, 16. Notably, Boise State is 11th, and Tulane is sandwiched in between Arizona State and Iowa State at 17. Not a good week for the Big 12 whatsoever. I think most people expected this. Most people knew this would happen. I didn't think the gap between Boise and Arizona State would be that big. I didn't think it'd be 5 spots big. And to me, that feels insurmountable no matter who wins the Big 12. And I mean, at this point, if you want to catch Boise, it has to be Arizona State or Iowa State, just based solely off of how far behind they are. And again, Boise is able to hang their hat on a really close loss to Oregon, on a last second loss to Oregon, and that's fine. They have the best loss in the country other than Ohio State, which also lost to Oregon. But what I think you have to remember, that Boise State loss to Oregon was in week 2 of the season. Week 1, Oregon almost lost to Idaho as well. That Oregon team that opened the season in early September is not the same as the Oregon team right now. And I know everything is judged as a whole throughout the season, but I still just don't think Boise State's the 11th best team in the country. And it's going to most likely, unless they get upset in the last week of the conference championship, it's going to prove really, really, really hard for the Big 12 to get a bye.
Yeah, I was a bit surprised as far as the Big 12 goes to see Kansas State in there. I think all of us kind of opened our eyes a little bit when we saw Kansas State back in the rankings. That's going to be an opportunity, obviously, for Iowa State.
It helps. It helps Iowa State for sure
to notch potentially 2 top 25 wins before the playoff. So if that's going to be enough to maybe surpass Boise, I don't know. It seems like Boise State always kind of is just hanging right around 10 there. And to be honest, I'm glad you brought that up with the Oregon loss early in the season. I don't think Boise State's exactly playing their best football by any means either, because
not at all.
They have a 1-score game against Wyoming last week. I think 2 out of the last 3 in the Mountain West have been 1-possession games. So they're not exactly blowing the doors off of their competition in the Mountain West. And let's face it, the Mountain West it's not a power conference. It's just simply not. So the respect that the committee has for Boise State, I don't know if it's with Ashton Genty or what it is exactly with them. They're showing some favoritism towards Boise, and that's fine. Again, I think what you said, Iowa State or Arizona State are going to have to be the two schools that represent the Big 12 for any chance of them having a bye. And then the other thing is, I think the elephant in the room here is just looking at the SEC, and there is really, honestly, a path for 5 SEC teams to get in the playoff. You have South Carolina, Ole Miss, and Alabama, all 11, 13, and 15 here, all hanging around in the 13, 14, 15, all hanging right there close to that top 12. So again, do not be surprised to see maybe 1 or even 2, 3 loss SEC teams in the playoff, and it makes me sick just saying that.
See, I'll disagree there because so they've got Iowa State, or not Iowa State, but the Big 12 outside of the top 12. So you're going to need to finish in the top 11 as an SEC team to get in. I don't see any way they put more than 4. And that's just looking at the current standings. You would have to have like SMU get destroyed in the ACC championship. Indiana would have to get upset maybe. I think the SEC screwed themselves enough this past weekend to where they're not going to get 5 in. And if they got 5, I'll eat crow. That would be just absurd. Completely absurd.
I'll believe it when I see it. I'll just put it that because I don't trust this committee one damn bit. So if they leave 1 out or a couple out, I'm fine with that. But I would be very surprised if there's not at least a snub or 2 for the SEC trying to get in. So again, I'll hold my tongue for now, but until they prove me wrong, I'm just going to keep saying it.
We'll move on in the 12 pack in just a second, but we should probably address Tulane. I don't think they should be an issue, but I just think it's ridiculous that they're ranked above Iowa State. Their best win is probably, I can't remember. They beat one of the academy schools. It was either Army or Navy. I can't remember, but that's their best win. They lost their 2 Power 5 chances or Power 4 chances against K-State and Oklahoma. At that point, you're just kind of making Iowa State play catch up because their 2 losses happened in November, whereas Tulane's happened back in September. I think the winner of the Big 12 will be ahead of Tulane no matter what, but it's still a little frustrating to see where they're at currently.
Derek, let's flip it to actual football. Most impressive team of the weekend.
Yeah, give me the Kansas State Wildcats. I know it's not the sexiest pick, but they really needed a bounce-back win after that emotional loss to Arizona State the week before. Avery Johnson didn't do anything great in this game against Cincinnati, but he didn't have to because DJ Giddens went off for a $143 and 2 touchdowns. And Kansas State's defense played a whole lot better. They held Cincinnati without a touchdown for the first 40 minutes of that game. And they really kind of just let their foot off the gas late in the fourth quarter. So Cincinnati did end up scoring a couple times. But again, I know Kansas State's still on the outside looking in, but this was a nice bounce-back win for them. And who knows, anything can happen. And maybe somehow they luck their way into Arlington next weekend with some help. So you never know.
They needed that win so badly. Just because it'd been stretched over the span of a bye week and a really, really bad loss to Houston, a blowout loss to Arizona State. They hadn't won a game since they squeaked by Kansas, so they really needed that. And speaking of Kansas, that's who I'll go with for my most impressive team. I don't know if you saw this story, but they have a foreign punter, and it was senior day. So this punter, his family came to watch him, and he didn't get to punt once because Colorado didn't get a stop. That's how impressive and how unstoppable Kansas' offense was on Saturday. They become the first team ever to have a losing record and have 3 wins over ranked opponent, or 3 straight wins over ranked opponents. They're playing some of the best football in the entire country right now, and they took it to a team that we would have said is playing the best football in the conference. Nothing but impressive outcomes in Lawrence right now, or Kansas City, wherever they're playing football.
Jake, who was your most disappointing team of the weekend?
I'll bounce it off of where Derek went, and I'll go with Cincinnati. The Bearcats have quietly lost 4 games in a row, and that was a blowout. The final score was honestly a little closer than the game even was, and that was a game that was over pretty much immediately. K-State ran for, I believe, over 300 yards on the ground. So Cincinnati is reeling quick, and I know we'll talk about them in just a little bit.
I'm going to go with the team that we don't talk about a whole lot on the show, which is UCF. The Knights lost 31-21 in Morgantown to West Virginia, and were really never in control of that game. In fact, West Virginia held the ball for almost 38 minutes of that game and ran for over 200 yards against UCF. And that was just so odd for me to see, because coming into last weekend, UCF actually had one of the best run defenses in the Big 12. And for them to give up over 200 yards on the ground, very uncharacteristic of them. I mean, outside of RJ Harvey, who seems to be like the only bright spot of this football team, what else is there really to hang your hat on with them? It's just been a very disappointing for them. And now with the loss, it's eliminated them from bowl contention. They fall to 4-7. And after the game, it seemed like there were rumors about Gus Malzahn retiring, which he denied. Or, there's also been rumors about him maybe getting canned. So that was really a really bad loss for UCF on Saturday.
Yeah, I would have never thought their adjustment to the Big 12 would go this poorly. I thought they were, of the 4 newcomers a year ago, I thought they were the most equipped to make the jump up, and I've been wrong.
For sure.
BYU Arizona State had one of the craziest finishes outside of the actual game. I think you have to kind of put an asterisk on it. Jake, was that the craziest ending to a game you've ever seen?
It's up there. I was at the Southeast Polk Valley football game on Friday night in the Iowa High School 5A state championship, and that one was up there too. But as far as all the extracurriculars that went on in this game, I've just got to start. I don't understand what Arizona State was doing. When it happened, I didn't know what was going on. And the more I look back at it, the more ridiculous it just is. I think this isn't just a Kenny Dillingham thing. I think this is a football sport-wide problem. I get going down in a lot of circumstances, but there's some where you don't necessarily need to. And I would like your chances of just going up 2 scores and riding it out with however many seconds are left on the clock, 30. Instead, Arizona State tries this ridiculous way to bleed the clock, and you end up giving BYU a shot with a Hail Mary. That could have been the season right there, and that's without even mentioning the seemingly hours it took to get fans off the field after they stormed the field. It was Big 12 football at its finest.
Yeah, I kind of took a trip down memory lane here in the Big 12. I've been covering the conference since 2016, which I think some people would say Jake and Aiden were in diapers probably back in 2016 when it comes to the Big 12 coverage. But I can honestly say that this game was certainly up there. I jotted down a few games that came to mind. 2015, Tech and TCU, the tip touchdown. You had the Patrick Mahomes, Baker Mayfield showdown in 16. The OU comeback at Baylor in 19, the 2022 TCU Baylor game where TCU kicked that field goal as time expired, where they rushed the field goal unit on. And I've also witnessed 2 incredible Big 12 championship games, one in 21 with Oklahoma State and Baylor with a tackle on the 1-yard line, and then 22 you had overtime, TCU Kansas State. But as wild as all those games were that I just mentioned, I can't think of a more bizarre finish than what I saw in Tempe on Saturday. I mean, Arizona State could have solved a lot of issues, as you mentioned, if they would have just scored a touchdown. And their defense wasn't playing so poorly where they couldn't be trusted with a 2-possession lead with less than like a minute left. So they should have just scored. And I get trying to run out the clock, but losing 50 yards in the process wasn't smart either. Could you imagine if Sam Levitt fumbled the ball while running backwards and BYU picks it up and scores? We would be sitting here today talking about the biggest boneheaded coaching move we've ever seen and the biggest choke maybe of all time. And even doing what they did, they made a mistake by leaving a second left with BYU, getting a chance from midfield. You had the field rush. Kenny Dillingham literally cussing out the refs while they were reviewing the last play, surrounded by all the fans, screaming fans on the field. Took like 20 minutes to clear the field, and BYU, to their credit, almost pulled off a miracle. So I'm not sure how many people remember the 2009 Big 12 championship game where we had Texas and Nebraska, and Colt McCoy threw a pass out of bounds and just hit the ground with 1 second left. Nebraska thought they won. They reviewed it, and they said, no, there's 1 more second left. And Texas went on to kick a field goal and win that game. So this was definitely something I've never seen before, and I'm not sure if we ever will see something like this again in the Big 12.
I mean this in the nicest way possible. Sometimes we just, excuse me, need to push the nerds to the side in football. I know the analytics might say, well, you have a 99.8% chance of winning if you run out the clock and a 99.7% chance of winning if you just score the touchdown. So because we've got this 100th of a percentage of a margin between win percentage, I say try and run out the clock. It sounds nice in theory, and then you just watch it. And you're like, you know what? You know what sounds a little bit easier? 𝗀𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 just running in the end zone. Maybe that's just me. I don't know. I could be crazy.
The answer is always hand the ball to 𝗀𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃.
Exactly.
I don't care what the situation is. Give him the ball, get the hell out the way. All right, no room for hypothetical collapses here. BYU and Colorado both dropped some games. Derek, who had the bigger collapse?
I'm going with Colorado. I don't think BYU played bad against Arizona State, but I can't say the same for Colorado. They played like shit against Kansas, and they got their ass kicked. Colorado couldn't run the ball at all. Kansas really neutralized their explosive pass rush by running the football, which, let's face it, Colorado could not stop. They let Kansas run for over 330 yards in that game, got completely dominated up front. The tackling effort that I saw on Saturday was at an Oklahoma State level, which is like watching junior high kids tackle a college running back. Offensively, they couldn't do much either. They just looked so down on themselves, and you could see the frustration on their faces, the Colorado players. And instead of stepping up, they folded like a cheap tent in the most important game of the season. And I'll give Dion credit. I know he's caught a lot of stuff over the weeks and over the season and whatnot, but after the game, I think he really did say it best to his team. They let the outside noise and the success get to their heads, and they got humbled against Kansas.
It's kind of crazy how that didn't happen sooner, honestly, because we saw it last year. We saw it really early on. And that was, I believe, at least for me, the biggest reason why I would poke a hole in Colorado all season long, and it just hadn't happened yet. So I thought there truly was some maturity and growth in the program. And I do still think that's true. We're talking about a 9-win Colorado team potentially. We did not see 6 wins on this program, but still, relative to expectations, big picture, I still think Colorado's the bigger collapse, just because I thought that they had overcome a lot of those problems that they had, and they've resurfaced. Whereas BYU, they're playing with fire a lot this season, and I think they just regressed to the mean the last few weeks, and that's okay. They are still a win and a little bit of help away from playing for the Big 12 championship, and that's where Kansas is a top 20 team that's disguised at now 5-6, was 2-6 not that long ago. You can understand losing on that neutral field. We just saw it with Iowa State a couple weeks ago. But to not get a single stop, that's just a whole nother level, I think.
Speaking of Kansas, Jake, are they the best team in the Big 12 right now?
I don't know. I know it's not good podcast content. I think you have to say yes. The past 3 weeks, they have beaten 3 of the 4 other best teams in the league. And the problem with these big conferences is there are 4 potential teams, like 4 teams with a real shot. I know there's still like technically 9 teams alive or whatever, but there's 4 teams: Iowa State, Arizona State, Colorado, and BYU that can play for the Big 12 championship. BYU's only played one of those teams. Colorado has played none of those teams. Iowa State has played none of those teams. Arizona State's only played one of them. It's hard to say who the best team in the Big 12 is when most of the top teams haven't played each other. Kansas has played 3 of those teams in the last 3 weeks, and they've beat 2 of them convincingly at home or on the road, at home, and 1 on the road. They're playing the best football in the conference, but it's also in the same realm disappointing because they don't have a shot to play for the Big 12 title. In fact, this week they're playing for bowl eligibility, and that's because they could not close out a game to save their life in the first half of the season. If they would have done that, we could see Kansas peaking right now with a shot to represent the Big 12 in the playoff. But now they're just the spoiler in the Big 12.
Yeah, you said it best. They beat 3 of the top 4 teams in the Big 12 3 weeks in a row. So it's hard for me to say that they aren't the best team in the Big 12 right now. And Jalen Daniels hasn't been playing at a Heisman level like we all thought, but he's not making the same mistakes he was earlier in the year, and he's managed the offense quite well. And the run game, to their credit, is really taken off with Devin Neal, and that offensive line of theirs deserves a ton of credit because they are a solid unit. And their receivers they have are more than capable of giving teams issues. Now, the defense, on the other hand, it's not perfect by any means, but the thing about this Kansas team that I really like is they're just firing on all cylinders. Like, they're clicking at the right time. There's no shortage of talent on this team. Like, I know the record is what it is at 5-6, but there was a reason why people like myself picked this team to finish in the top 5 of the conference. The talent's there. The depth is there. The problem is that it took them 2 months to put it all together, which in college football is 2 months too late. So, but there's no hotter team right now in the Big 12 than Kansas.
Yeah, and it's a sport that is based off of merit. And it has to be because that's why you play the games. So we are not talking best resume. That would be asinine to say, yeah, Kansas is the best team in the Big 12, all things considered. That's not true, but they are playing like the best team in the Big 12. And I think that's what Vegas is telling us. When there's 3 weeks in a row where you're like, what the heck? Iowa State's only a field goal favorite over Kansas, this 3-6 Kansas team. What? BYU's only favored by 2.5 at home to Kansas. Like, there's a reason why this is happening, and Vegas was on it because, again, they approach everything very differently. And right now, Kansas is backing up what Vegas has laid out there.
Derek, would it be a successful season if Cincinnati makes a bowl game?
Personally, I think so. Now, there may be a lot of Cincinnati fans out there that would disagree with that because they expect more from this program, which is perfectly fine. But I'm not the biggest fan of Scott Satterfield since they hired him. Last season was their first in the Big 12, and I knew that there was going to be an adjustment period. You have a new coach, new conference. It's a lot to handle at one time. It's not easy. Like, it usually takes time for these new schools who come from lower conferences to adjust to life in the power conference. The talent's different. The depth's better. Everything is just simply harder, and being consistent is the hardest thing to do in football. And I didn't pick Cincinnati to finish in the top 10 of the Big 12 back in my preseason poll. I had concerns about them offensively, and I didn't think their defense was good enough to carry them. Now, they have had some moments this year where they played good football, and Brendan Sorsby looked like he could be the guy for them, and he's kind of just faded over the last few games. And this team, you mentioned earlier, 4 losses in a row, they've hit a brick wall. And after their 5-2 start, that's really concerning. And now they're going to be fighting for a bowl spot against TCU this weekend. So I say if they go 6-6, that would be a step in the right direction for this program. But if they lose, I think Scott Satterfield may be on the hot seat going into 2025. So this is a huge game for them this weekend.
I don't know this in and outs of the Cincinnati athletic department, but to me, they don't seem like someone who can afford to fire a coach already after just 2 years. Again, just making the jump up to the Power 4 level. So I don't think Satterfield is really anywhere close to the hot seat. But I do think 6-6 is somewhat successful just because I have such low expectations of Scott Satterfield. it was a hire that never really made sense to me. Felt like he never really overachieved when he was at Louisville. And you look at what Jeff Brom has done at Louisville once he left. And all that to be said, I just don't really see a world where they're a contender in the Big 12 under Satterfield. They brought in a decent recruiting class this year, ranked 8th in the conference. But looking into next year, the 2025 recruiting class, they're dead last in the Big 12. And again, recruiting rankings don't mean everything. I mean, some would argue they mean nothing. But that's just one trend that I don't love for the future of Cincinnati football. And who knows how long Satterfield will get in Cincinnati.
Jake, which program do you feel better about going forward, TCU or Texas Tech?
I answered this question in a bit of an inverse way because I don't trust either defense to become legit anytime soon. A lot of this became a quarterback question to me, which would mean Josh Hoover versus Will Hammond. Hammond, if you remember, is the true freshman that came in actually against TCU a couple weeks ago when Baron Morton got hurt and looked impressive. He showed some flashes. Josh Hoover is the more established, pretty good quarterback that has put up some pretty gaudy stats this year and has proven the ability a little bit to be good in the clutch. So all that to be said, I think I just want the unknown at quarterback. So give me Hammond.
Well, I think you could have Baron Morton come back next season too. So I don't know if it's necessarily going to be Hammond's job, but
Is that right? I was wrong.
Yeah.
I thought I remember on that broadcast them saying something along the lines of like, well, if this is it for Baron Morton as a Red Raider. So maybe that was just NCU. Oh my gosh, I can't say that word. Maybe it was just showing that he could transfer, I guess. But I thought it was Will Hammond's team next year. So ignore me.
It's fine. I think if we asked this question 2 years ago, it would have been TCU hands down, but this isn't 2 years ago. I've talked about Texas Tech and the job Joey McGuire has done down there in his first 2 seasons. He's had back-to-back winning seasons, which hasn't happened since Mike Leach was there. And he did that despite having the worst injury luck at quarterback that I've ever seen, maybe. So there were times last year where I've said before they were playing their third-string quarterback. Now, this season didn't quite go as expected. They've had some ups and downs, and they've certainly been bitten by the injury bug as well, once again, especially up front on their offensive line. And their defense has a whole lot of work to do, as you mentioned earlier. But this team has a shot to win 8 games for the second time in 3 years, which hasn't happened since Mike Leach was there. And here's a nice little stat that I looked up. The last time Texas Tech had a head coach to have 3 straight years with a record above 500 in conference play, it was Spike Dykes. So not even the legendary Mike Leach accomplished that during his time in Lubbock. And I know sometimes Joey loves to talk and brag a bit, which probably doesn't help him because it can make people very impatient and make people expect more from you. But I think what he's doing is slowly building this thing up. This program's still heading in the right direction under him. Money has been pumped into that program into no end. And I think Joey's going to be the guy that gets him there. Now, we'll say Sonny Dykes can salvage this season if he ends up winning 8 games, and that's a big improvement. But moving forward, I think I would take Joey McGuire. Just because what he's been able to do at Tech. So for now, I think I'm still going to stick with Joey over Sonny Dykes here.
And what I will say is we have seen so much in the Big 12 that has proven that there is not a marquee program going forward. There is not one that stands above the rest unless Coach Prime is in it for the long run at Colorado, which I'll believe that when I see it. Which means that both of these programs should be in the mix every single year. Hands down. They should be minimum 8-9 wins year in, year out with the resources they have, with the hotbed that they exist in, and the fan support, especially on the Texas Tech side. I know TCU might struggle a little bit with that stuff, but they should both be at the top half of the Big 12 every single year.
Agreed. So should UCF.
Yes.
Always a good week when we get to bring up our beloved Coach Leach. Derek, out of the 5 teams who have been eliminated from bowl contention, that's UCF, Houston, Utah, Oklahoma State, and Arizona, who has had the most disappointing season?
I don't want to include Oklahoma State in that since they've been out for a while, and I think they're clearly the biggest disappointment, not just in the Big 12, but maybe in college football. And I've already ranted enough about their problems this season. I don't want to waste any more of my breath talking about them anymore. So Utah, obviously a disappointment, but I wonder how many games they could have won with Cam Rising if he was healthy. UCF, I was never really a big believer, nor in Houston this year with year one under Willie Fritz. So that leaves me with Arizona. Before the season, I wrote an article, said that they were going to be the most overrated team in the Big 12. I knew Fafita was talented. McMillan obviously would be a beast, but outside of those two, I felt like the cupboard was a little bare for them to be competitive in year one in the Big 12, especially in the trenches. So I just don't think they have enough talent across the board to compete. So could you imagine Arizona without those 2 star players? Like, they might be winless.
Where are they? Yeah.
Yeah, they might be winless. So, and the other thing I worry about them, which is really concerning for me at least, is Brent Brennan. It's very rare I hear about a coach on the hot seat after just 1 year at a school, but there's a good chunk of the fan base that's willing to get rid of him. So, and he might be a nice guy, but I didn't love the hire to begin with. I don't see what he brings to the table there for that program, but all I see is a team that has some decent talent, especially at skill positions, but it's just wasted because it's poorly coached and unprepared for.
My bad. I might have gone behind your back in adding Oklahoma State to that list. I thought you made a typo. So
it's fine.
I will agree with you and exclude Oklahoma State from this conversation because of what they returned. I got to go Utah. If I would have told you back in August, Iowa State would go to Salt Lake City, throw a pick 6, have a punt block return for a touchdown, and Jalen Knoll would muff a punt, what would the score have been? What would you have said? 40-13?
Yeah,
Something
it would
like
have been
that?
a blowout. It would have been a blowout.
Well, Iowa State won, and Iowa State completely dominated pretty much every facet of the game except 5 plays. And that is something I never, ever saw coming with Utah coming into the Big 12. And maybe I was just brainwashed by a lot of the national media that Utah could just walk in and win the conference no matter what. And I don't necessarily believe all of that. They have dealt with injuries across the board, not just at the quarterback spot. But still, Utah had the prestige coming in. They won a Rose Bowl 2 years ago, and they did not live up to the expectations at all. They are a really bad football team, a really, really bad football team. And those are just not words I thought would come out of my mouth on this program at all this year.
Absolutely. Jake, Big 12 title, tiebreak scenarios are obviously clear, cut, and dry.
Yeah.
Who do you have playing for the Big 12 championship?
Well, this is easy. I mean, I've got the tiebreakers just memorized off the top of my head. So, no, I have spent too much time looking at tiebreakers. If I would have spent half the time this season that I've spent looking at Big 12 tiebreakers and took that to WealthCharter Retirement Planning and Tax, I would be halfway to $1 million right now. That's how much time I've wasted looking at these tiebreakers. And I feel so stupid from like 7 weeks ago looking, well, I think Iowa State should really be cheering for Texas Tech right now because if they beat them, then they have the none of it matters until we get to this point. And here it is. We know what has to happen for every single team if they want to get in. And I'm going to be boring and I'm going to say it's chalk. I think we get Iowa State versus Arizona State in the Big 12 championship. And Aiden and I are going to have some tough conversations amongst us on where our allegiances will fall in Dallas.
Yeah, if you're sitting there looking at Big 12 tiebreakers all day, I feel like you're going to be like the Charlie Day meme where he's got all the strings attached to the board.
𝗙𝗵𝗹𝗶.
Yeah, so I don't even smoke cigarettes, but when I look at the tiebreakers and I try to break everything down, I feel like I want a cigarette, so I try not to look at that.
It's like Zodiac.
Yeah, I'm sure about one team. That team's Arizona State. With their win over BYU last weekend, all they need to do is beat Arizona. I know it's a rivalry game, and those two schools absolutely hate each other, but there's no way I could pick Arizona to win that game with the way they've looked this season. So that's why I do believe Arizona State will be the first team to punch their ticket to Jerry World. As for my second team, I'm going to hold off on that until my picks. I know that may piss some people off, but like any good TV show, I have to drag this thing out to make you watch and listen to the end. So I'm saving the second one here.
Our poor viewers. Just kidding. Our viewers are the best. Our viewers, our listeners, thank you for supporting this program. We literally could not do any of this without you. So thanks for sticking around on this program. We just got 2 questions left to go in the 12-pack.
All right, Derek. Which Big 12 team would have the best chance to win a playoff game?
Is it crazy to say that Kansas would be the best team to represent the Big 12 in the playoff with the 5-6 record? Because if you gave me that option, if I could pick any team, I would pick Kansas.
Make the committee throw them in there.
Yeah, I already said earlier that they're the best team in the Big 12, so why wouldn't I pick them to represent the conference in the college football playoff? Jalen Daniels, again, looks like a completely different player than he was 2 months ago, or even a month ago for that matter. Devin Neal is really emerging as one of the best running backs in the Big 12. I like their weapons at receiver. I really love how physical their offense is up front, and I think that's why they could have some success against some of these teams in the SEC and the Big 10. So Kansas' second best rushing offense in the Big 12. They're averaging over 212 yards per game, only behind UCF. So defensively, again, not the greatest team. Now, do they deserve to be in the playoff? Like, absolutely not with their record. But if this team played in the SEC and had 6 losses, Greg Sankey would find a way to get this damn team in. Again, this team doesn't have a chance to represent the Big 12 due to their resume, but I don't think it's crazy to say that they're the team that would have the best chance to win a playoff game with the way they've been playing. So, again, I'm going with Kansas. Is it the right answer? Probably not based on resume, but they're the team playing the best football right now.
Well, I can tell you it's not the right answer because they have a 0% chance of winning a playoff game. There are a few teams that have a chance, and Kansas is not one of them, which is why I'm going to go with Colorado. They have the 2 best players in the league. And there's a couple matchups like Notre Dame. They could have the 2 best players on the field at any given time. And that would be why I give them the leg up over the next 3 Big 12 teams. And again, I know they took a step back against Kansas, but I still trust the all-around development of their team. However, I think there's an argument for Iowa State too. And that's not disrespecting BYU or Arizona State, but I just think this Iowa State program has more experience in these big games as far as Matt Campbell goes. I know this current personnel maybe doesn't. And then I do think Iowa State is probably the most malleable of any team in the conference. I think they've proven that they can win in the most different ways. And that could help depending on who you're going up against. Maybe it's a Notre Dame or a Penn State. You might have to win a little bit ugly, but I know Iowa State has also shown that if they need to go down the field with 3 minutes left and score, they can do that. But either way, the way it's shaping out, it's looking like the Big 12 is going to have to go on the road. It's going to be a tough path to win a playoff game.
Finally here, Jake, what were your takeaways from this past weekend?
That not every conference is judged the same. When it's chaos in the SEC, it's one thing. I know Derek will probably disagree with this, but I don't think Florida is a bad loss at this point. If you look at what they've done with DJ Lagway in the lineup. But what I think right now, the problem with the perception with how these losses are handled is right now, Ole Miss's loss to Florida is being judged the same as Alabama's loss to Oklahoma and Texas A&M's loss to Auburn. And that is just not the case. Not every win and not every loss is created equal. And I think when it comes to the SEC, they are created equal because you just say, oh, oh yeah, the depth of the SEC. It's so much better. It's so much better than any other league. What a win for Auburn. It's not that bad of a loss for Texas A&M. That's a tough place to play. But when it happens in the Big 12 or even the Big 10, which it doesn't happen in the Big 10 because I don't think there's been a single upset in that entire conference all year. When it happens in the Big 12, the Big 12 sucks. It's terrible. Top to bottom, it's bad. And you're not going to listen to me make the case that the Big 12 is better than the SEC. It's just not going to happen. The SEC is the best conference in football. But again, it's the double standard that we just need a little bit of consistency in, and we are not going to get it anytime soon.
Yeah, that I agree with what you said there with the media standpoint. Like, I know people love Josh Pate and everything, but when he said that, like, hey, this loss to Florida is not that bad, well, nobody was saying that about Kansas when the BYU lost to them, and then you saw what the committee did to them. They dropped them down 8 spots. And when Alabama loses to an Oklahoma team who was like, 5-6 on the year, completely blew them out by 20-plus points, Alabama only drops a few spots. So that's my whole issue.
I totally agree with that.
There's so many double standard. It's ridiculous. But for the conference sake here, this is complete and utter chaos. And according, like we've said before, to the Big 12, there's still 9 teams that are in contention for a Big 12 title heading into the final week of the regular season. What other conference in college football can say that? Nobody. Like, let the national media say what they want about the conference because what they think does not matter. Is there an elite team in the conference? Maybe not. Is this the deepest conference in college football from top to bottom? Yes. Is this the most entertaining conference in America? 100%, and I absolutely love it. It's a beautiful mess to watch.
No disagreements there. If you don't love watching Big 12 football,
Something's wrong with you.
I don't love you. I'll be harsh. I'll be harsh on that. All right, we're going to bring Aiden in for a trivia question in just a second, but first, let's give a thanks to Freedom Tire. One of our viewers, I believe his name is Caleb Vasconez, in our YouTube comments, wanted me to sing. Should I sing?
Ooh.
I'm no Chris Hassel.
You are not Chris Hassel.
Maybe I'll just give like one freedom. Freedom Tire. There you go, Caleb. That was for you, man. Hope you're having a good day. But Freedom Tire, do not let the jingle that I just tried to attempt sway you away from going there. Their service is great while my voice is not. Freedom Tire, they've got locations in Ankeny, in Ames, Altoona, Fleur Drive, Hickman and Urbandale, and West Des Moines. I went there just a month ago. Couldn't ask for a better experience. And I would highly recommend, if you're listening to this on a Wednesday, if you got a big weekend of travel ahead, go and get it. Because if you're in Iowa, these winter conditions are not far away, and you will be able to feel that Saturday night at Jack Trice Stadium. Go and get your car winter weather ready, and get your tires ready for those terrible Iowa roads in the winter. Thank you to Freedom Tire and Quentin Crowner and his team for taking care of us at Iowa Everywhere. Aiden, come on in.
All right. Derek, what's your confidence level this week?
I'm sorry?
What's your confidence level this week?
Ooh. Not high. Probably about as high as Jake's trying to sing that jingle like Hassel. That's probably the same level. So,
I knew it was going to be bad.
Well,
I didn't claim to know that David Letterman was an Iowan with 1,000% confidence.
Yeah. Oh. All right.
That was bad.
This first ballot Hall of Famer pitched for the Cleveland Guardians hails. Well,
I'm messing with you.
I know what you're trying to say.
Hails from Van Meter, Iowa. Nicknamed the Heater from Van Meter.
I don't even think I have a guess.
Pitcher? He served in World War II, I believe. Yeah.
Yeah, he did.
I definitely don't know my Cleveland baseball history here. I'm sorry, that's a team I just don't even pay attention to. I sometimes forget they exist in the MLB.
Well, he was on their World Series team back in 1948, so.
See, I was how old at then? Okay.
Yeah.
No, I have no idea.
It's Bob Feller.
Yes.
The heater from
Bob
Van
Feller.
Meter.
Okay.
Had a beer with old Bobby Feller the other day. Good guy. No, I think
He died like 15 years ago.
Yeah, I think Mr. Fellers has been deceased for a while, but legendary Iowan, maybe the most successful Iowan athlete ever in comparison to really any sport. I know some of the gymnasts could make a case. Gabby Douglas, I know Lolo Jones. Yeah, Lolo Jones and track can make an argument, but Bob Feller is. I mean, I should probably stop giving away future trivia questions. I'll close my mouth.
Fun fact, though, 𝗙elle was Bob Feller's high school catcher.
Wow.
Yeah, and 𝗙elle was from Adel, Iowa, which is about 20 minutes from Van Meter. Van Meter, great football. By the way, great football, great basketball. Actually, they're pretty much good at everything. But let's move into our Iowa State segment. Cracking one for the clones. I've got some water. I need to cut back on the carbs ahead of these next few days. It's an unhealthy time to be a human with Thanksgiving week. Rolling around, our hot topic today is Iowa State's game Saturday against Kansas State the most important in program history?
When I saw that, I think I would still put the 2020 Big 12 title game ahead of it, simply due to the fact that it was a conference title game. Like this game this weekend is important, and it's to get to a potential title game. But the 2020 game was the real deal. Like, you beat Oklahoma in that game, you're Big 12 champions. Like, if they would have won that game, Matt Campbell may have had a statue outside of Jack Trice the next morning when he woke up. But make no mistake about it, this game on Saturday has to be like a top 3 game in Iowa State history. And by no means am I some Iowa State history buff, and I'm not a lifelong Iowa State fan like some of you watching or listening are. So there may be some people out there that can probably answer this question better than I can, but there's so much on the line on Saturday. First off, the obvious thing here is pretty much that this is pretty much a playoff game to get to the next playoff game, which is the Big 12 championship. And by winning this game, you are giving yourself a really good chance to have the opportunity to play for what every team in this conference dreams of. This game can help you get to a ticket to the big dance, possibly. Then, of course, the other thing, which is history. Like, Iowa State has never won 10 games in a season before. Not even the 2020 team did it, that went on to win the Fiesta Bowl because it was a COVID year, so that also plays a factor. But not only do you get a chance to make history on Saturday, you get to beat your rival maybe in the process. You give your shot at a conference championship. So very, very special weekend ahead for the Cyclones.
I'm in total agreement. It's still the 2020 Big 12 championship until further notice. But what I have seen floating around is people saying, they're like, oh, this is the first shot ever for the playoff. In 2020, Iowa State was ranked 6th going into the Big 12 championship game. Even if they won, I don't think they would have made it. But I believe Texas A&M finished 5th in the rankings that year. So it wasn't too far-fetched for Iowa State to maybe have an outside shot if they would have won that Big 12 championship game. So yes, that is still number one until further notice. But I do believe that this is the biggest game in Jack Trice Stadium history, and that I don't even think it's close. There have been games before to get to the Big 12 championship, one of them being the I believe 2004, or not NFC North, Big 12 North division championship, essentially, where Iowa State lost to Missouri. And then 2020 technically was a win and get in against West Virginia, but Iowa State was never losing that game to West Virginia, and there were no fans allowed because of COVID. So this is by far the biggest game in Jack Trice Stadium history. And I think I was at the second one, and I I sent Aiden a video of it. It was the 2017 Iowa State TCU game. And I was looking back at my memories of this video the other day. And I was so embarrassed. Aiden.
Yes! Yes, baby, yes! Again!
I think you were just a little bit excited there.
I watched that video like 20 times, and every time I couldn't believe that I went up to Alan Lazard and I'm like, Alan Lazard, yes! And I can't believe even worse that I was like mid-celebration and a TCU player walked past me. I'm like, hey, good game. Like, I'm on the team. Terrible. That game was so awesome, though. I figured I'd share that with the audience. I would have been 16 in that video, so cut me some slack. But gosh, that was really bad. Really, really bad.
I don't even know what to say. You told Alan Lazard, like, yes, like he didn't even, like, Alan didn't know what happened. Like, he had just played the game.
Yeah.
Oh, that was good.
It's bad stuff. But I still think that 2017 atmosphere, and I'm sure Aiden would back me up on this, is the best that I've ever been to at Jack Trice Stadium. There's a couple up there. 2018 against West Virginia was pretty great. And this is going to be a hot take because it was only half empty. But 2020 Oklahoma, the first game back with fans that season, was unbelievably electric. Aiden and I sat together that game. It was so awesome. And that's why we don't want to spend too much time on this because we want to get moving. I think there's a little bit too much fear mongering going into the crowd for Saturday. Like, I think the game will probably sell out, but I don't think it's going to be full. Last I knew, there was less than 1,000 tickets left. Even if it's not a sellout, it's going to be pretty darn close. And I don't think the hillsides or maybe the top corners of the stadium are going to be completely full. But what I've learned being at Jack Trice is it's not really the amount of people that are there. Like, it's the first 30,000 that are responsible for 95% of the noise. Everything else on top of that is gravy. And I'm not saying there's going to be 30,000. That'd be ridiculous. I think it's going to be like a 56,000 person stadium. And it's going to be in an electric atmosphere. And I don't understand what all the fuss is about before the game even happened. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
Yeah, just bring your flask. You'll be fine. It'll warm you up.
Well, maybe they do what I know, Aiden, you were talking about it on Murph and Andy. They do what they did in 2021 against TCU and just bring whatever you want in. Bring your Thanksgiving leftovers. Bring a 24 case of Busch Light. Just bring it in. I don't think they'll do that because the crowd is still going to be great, but that'd be pretty fun if they did that. So let's just say hypothetically Iowa State wins. And we're going to assume that this 1 in a million scenario where they win and miss out doesn't happen. Who would be the most ideal Big 12 championship opponent if you're an Iowa State fan between BYU, Arizona State, and Colorado?
I was going to say you'd really want one of those fringe teams at like TCU or West Virginia, someone that's got a tiny chance to make it. But
yeah,
I think Iowa State matches up well with a team like BYU. Arizona State, if I had to pick the two, I'd say BYU. They're kind of in a funk offensively, and Retzlaff's been turnover prone the last few weeks, and their defense is still good, but it's not something Iowa State couldn't handle. And I just think BYU as a whole they're not playing their best football right now. They aren't the same team they were back in September, even October for that matter. So I would say BYU.
Yeah, I power rated it. I went BYU 1, Arizona State 2, Colorado 3. I think BYU has regressed to the mean, and they're a good team. They're a really good team. Don't get me wrong. But if you're giving me one opponent where I feel best about Iowa State's chances, it's them. Arizona State above Colorado just because I do feel like they're also less complete. However, Iowa State has had problems stopping the run, and 𝗀𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃 is probably the best running back in the conference. If not the best, he's in the top 3. So that could be a tough matchup. But if I'm being honest, Iowa State secondary hasn't really been tested by an elite quarterback since Cade McNamara in week 2. Okay, I'm glad you got that joke. Iowa State secondary hasn't really been tested by a totally elite quarterback all year, and I'm not sure I want to witness it in the Big 12 championship. Spencer Sanders. Is he still throwing the ball around? Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter and all of the other weapons that they have on offense. I'm just not sure I want to be curious with what would happen in that type of game.
How dare you bring up a QB that costs so much money and does absolutely nothing for their program?
Sorry for having a sense of humor, man. No, I'm kidding. I'm sure I got a couple Iowa buddies that'll listen and text me that I'm always just taking shots at Iowa. Get over it, man. Get over it, man. I'm sorry. That's all I got to say. Well, Aiden, I hope I didn't just spoil the random Big 12 quarterback by saying Spencer Sanders while talking about Shedeur Sanders.
That'd be pretty funny if it did.
I would be shocked if you guys get this one.
Oh, that's
keeping it real. All right. This quarterback only started 1 full year at his school, but appeared in 4 years. So only 1 year as a full-time starter. He only had just under 2,700 yards in 23 career games. Or sorry, that's passing yards. 16 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. His backup is currently an NFL quarterback. Not a starter, but in the NFL.
Oh, boy.
You know what? I'll give you the school. It's Kansas State.
It's Kansas State.
Yeah.
So his backup is now an NFL backup, correct?
At one point, yes.
Okay.
He was the backup.
So I think that would be Skylar Thompson.
It's Skylar. So Skylar Thompson's the quarterback in the NFL.
Who predated Skylar Thompson.
Man.
Those were some rough K-State quarterback years in between Colin Klein and Skylar Thompson.
This guy is also a Burlington, Iowa native.
Oh boy, that's a rough. The B-Town crew.
This guy, but did he play for the same school for all 4? Was it all Kansas State every year, or did he transfer out?
Okay, all 4 years at Kansas State.
Oh, wow.
He was full-time starter as a junior.
Who started the infamous Paul Rhodes game in Manhattan?
I don't think it was it wasn't Jake Waters.
No, Jake Waters is from a different part of southern Iowa. Burlington is southeast Iowa. Waters is from southwest Iowa.
I remember actually. I was looking at the corners of Iowa. We were talking about that the other day. It's pretty funny. I don't have a guess because I can think of Kansas State quarterbacks. I can think of you had Klein, then you had Jake Waters. You had like Alex Delton, Skylar Thompson. I don't remember the guy between Waters and Thompson except for Alex Delton. And it's not Alex Delton because he transferred to TCU. So I don't know that 2015 quarterback off the top of my head.
I got nothing. I've erased all memory of that game existing. So that's my built-in excuse.
That's the fumble game, right?
Fumbles, plural.
Fumbles game. Excuse me. Okay. Yeah, I can't remember off the top of my head who was the starter then.
This guy actually did not start the Paul Rhodes game.
Really? Was it that year, though?
He only played 1 game that year.
So he would have been the starter in 16 then?
Yes.
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah.
And it wasn't Alex Delton?
No.
Oh, okay. You're gonna have to give it to us. I don't think
It's gonna come to me.
𝗀𝗃𝗍𝗃𝗃.
So that 2016 year,
Weird.
Campbell actually came close to beating K-State. Something happened at the goal line late in that game.
Aiden, can you see their schedule? Are you on
Yes.
is that the year they beat Texas A&M in the Texas Bowl?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah, they went like 9-4, I think.
Now I remember that game. Okay. Yeah, he's very forgettable in the list of Kansas State quarterbacks in the last 15 years.
A look behind the curtain of how I come up with those quarterbacks is I go to ChatGPT and type in like name a random Big 12 quarterback from X year. And I think I did 2016. And 𝗀esse 𝗔𝗃𝗍𝗃 came up. I'm like, yeah, that's the one. That's the one.
That's the definition of a random Big 12 quarterback.
Yeah.
Wow. Good work, ChatGPT.
That was good.
All right, let's get in some picks. We've got some irrelevant games this week, and we've got some really relevant games. This one is pretty relevant, not because of necessarily the outcome, but who's involved. And the reason I call it kind of relevant, because there's no way they should lose this game. Colorado hosting Oklahoma State Friday at 11 a.m. on ABC. The Buffs are favored by 16.5. The over-under is 64.5.
I just wonder how Colorado's going to come out after that tough loss last weekend. Super early kickoff Friday morning in Boulder. Oklahoma State did show me something offensively a little bit last weekend, so I think Colorado wins, but Oklahoma State puts up a small fight. Give me OSU to cover.
I'm going to take the Buffs to cover. You mentioned how bad the tackling was at Arrowhead. That is all that staff will be talking about this week. Colorado will have no problem putting up points. Oklahoma State might score a little bit, but I still think Colorado should win this game by 3 scores. This is a game that I would have put in 𝘀cie in September as a massive game on the Big 12 slate. And it is actually, I believe it is the most irrelevant game of the weekend because I don't think it has a single tiebreak. It factors into 0 tiebreakers whatsoever. Utah at UCF. The Knights are favored by 9 at home. The over-under is 49.5 for a Friday night kickoff on Fox.
If I would have told both fan bases before the season that these two were going to be playing the last weekend of the regular season and they weren't going to even go to a bowl game, I might have had some possible threats against my life against this, because with Utah and UCF, both fan bases thought they were going to do so many great things this year. And now this game means next to nothing, which is very disappointing. I don't trust either offense here, and both defenses are capable of stopping the run. And they both love running the football. I like the under here. I just don't see either offense scoring more than 25 points.
Yeah, I agree with that. We just saw what Utah's offense did against Iowa State. I don't think there's a lot of points scored in this game, and I think it goes pretty quick because of how much these teams like to run the ball. Give me the under. Saturday morning, 2 of the hottest teams in the conference, probably 2 of the 5 hottest teams in the conference, squaring off at 11 a.m. on ESPN2. Kansas goes to Waco to take on Baylor. The Bears are favored by 1.5, over under 61.5.
I know Baylor's been playing better over the last few weeks, but there is no hotter team in the Big 12 than Kansas right now. I'm taking the Jayhawks.
Yeah, I just don't see how at this point you pick against the Jayhawks. They've proven it 3 weeks in a row. But again, based off the precedent that Vegas has set for us the past few weeks, I would have thought Kansas was favored by 5 in this game, which gives me a little doubt, but I'm still just going to take the Jayhawks. It's probably not the smart move betting-wise. This game has implications for Iowa State. It could make it, if West Virginia wins at Texas Tech at 11 a.m. on FS1, then Iowa State does control their own destiny. I guess we'll have to see. Texas Tech's favored by 3.5 at home. Over-under is 64.5.
West Virginia had a nice win against UCF last week to become bowl eligible, but Tech has a chance to get their 8th win of the season, and they still have a small chance to get into a Big 12 title game. That means this game's means a lot more to the Red Raiders and the Tech for me. So I like the Red Raiders offense to go off in this game. I'm going to take Tech to cover.
I don't know what it is about West Virginia on the road. They've been really good away from home this year. And again, I would have thought this line would be closer to a touchdown. Because it's trending towards West Virginia, it makes me think that Vegas wants me to take Texas Tech. So I'm going to go the other way and take West Virginia plus 3.5 on the road. A huge rivalry game for the first time in the Big 12. It's been played for a lot of years elsewhere. Arizona State at Arizona. The Sun Devils favored by 9 on the road. Over-unders 53.5 for a 2:30 kickoff on Fox.
Yeah, rivalry games are always tough to predict, and this is Arizona's Super Bowl because they have nothing else to play for here except for to spoil Arizona State's dream season. The spread's too high, but I don't trust Arizona either. I think I want to take the over here. Arizona State wins, but the over hits too.
I think Arizona State is playing a little bit too well right now. I think there's a bit of a regression. They win, but I do think Arizona covers. And these rivalry games are usually a field goal closer than you might think. But I do know that Arizona State has everything to play for. But Arizona, they've got a lot to play for too in terms of wanting to stick it to your rival. I'll take the Wildcats plus 9. 3 games to go. Let's go with TCU at Cincinnati. The Horned Frogs favored by 3 on the road. The over-unders 58.5 for a 5 p.m. kickoff. A rare 5 p.m. kickoff on ESPN+.
Yeah, we get all the random times here in the Big 12. I love the way TCU's offense is playing, but Cincinnati also has a chance to get to a bowl game here. Neither defense is great, and I can see this one spilling into the 60s. I like the over here in this game.
Gosh dang it, I'm taking the over too. I won't add anything to that, but we're probably tailing each other a little bit too much. A 9:15 kick. This game could mean the world to BYU and Iowa State, or it could mean nothing, depending on the results earlier in the day. The Cougs favored over the Cougs at home by 12.5. The over-under is 41.5. Again, 9:15 in Provo. Houston at BYU.
This has got to be the week where BYU bounces back, but Houston's defense is no pushover. But man, that spread's too high for me and that number's too low. I like the over here. I'm taking a lot of overs this week. I like the over here.
Gosh, I'm taking the over too, and it's just because I don't think the math adds up. That's too high of a spread for that low of an over-under. So I'm just going to take the over and assume that this game at least gets somewhere in the 20s, I would think, for BYU in the upper 20s. And they do have a lot to prove. And we'll close with the Farmageddon. One of the best rivalries in the entire sport. Iowa State favored by 2.5 at Jack Trice Stadium. The over-under 52.5. A 6:30 kick under the lights on Fox.
I'm so excited for this one. It's going to be cold. It's whiskey weather. It's football weather. It's Farmageddon weather. This is one of the best rivalries in the Big 12, and it's a chance to make history for Iowa State. I've said it that before the season that this Iowa State team would win 10 games, and I'm not backing down now. Give me the damn Cyclones, baby, and hello, Arlington. Oh, the money gun did not go off.
Dude, it almost made it the whole season. That thing had a good run.
I'll pull out one bill. There we go.
Is that a bad omen?
That might be a bad omen. That thing got jammed.
How successful has that thing been the last few weeks? Just record-wise, not execution-wise.
It's been money. It's been money.
Still been money. Okay, well, I'm going to go Iowa State as well. Matt Campbell's been pretty good against Chris Kleiman the past few years. And there's been a lot of years where Deuce Vaughn comes in as the top running back in the conference, and Iowa State was able to bottle him up. Not just like slow him down, but completely bottle him up. I don't think Iowa State is going to be able to completely bottle up DJ Giddens or Avery Johnson, but I do think the defense will do just enough to hold K-State to field goals. because I think they're going to get their yards and they're going to get in the red zone, but I think John Haycock's defense will do just enough to keep K-State to field goals, and then Rocco Becht and Taylor Mauser will do it once again and lead a drive late in the fourth quarter in what might end up being the best win at Jack Trice Stadium history. But man, it's going to be a good one. I'll take Iowa State -2.5. No money gun for me. I need to get one. But so last week, Derek went 6-2. I think I forgot to submit my picks or something like that. So just by default, Derek gets the minute of fame to rant, to talk, do literally whatever he wants. The floor's all yours, Derek.
I would like to start with the rant and then end with something positive. So it's probably not the best idea for me to end the show angry and with my blood boiling. So win with something positive this week. But for now, one thing that I saw today that really bothered me was when I saw the Doak Walker Award finalist. The three chosen today were Ashton Jeanty from Boise State, which is obvious, Caleb Johnson from Iowa, who's deserving, but then you had Amarian Hampton from North Carolina. And has anybody seen his stats? Because if you look at his stats compared to everybody else in that group, he doesn't belong. You know who does belong? R.J. Harvey from UCF. He's been the best running back in the Big 12 all season long. And when you compare his stats to Hampton's, I don't see how he didn't get in. Hampton's got 17 more yards than Harvey, but it also took him 47 more carries to get there. R.J. Harvey averaged 6.9 yards per carry. Hampton just 5.7. And as far as rushing touchdowns go, Harvey has 7 more. And he also has more receiving yards than Hampton as well. So I felt like R.J. Harvey really got screwed, and I'm really pissed off for him. Now, on a more positive note here, it has come to my attention that my co-host here is a finalist for the National Sports Media Association State Sportscaster of the Year. Jake, anytime you are on a list with the legendary Keith Murphy, you did something good, and congrats, buddy. I know you work your ass off, and you deserve it.
I appreciate it. Thank you very much. And don't forget the Godfather, John Walters. It's
of course.
It's pretty insane to be even listed next to those guys. Like if it was John Walters, Keith Murphy, Shannon Earhart, who also is very deserving, and then just honorable mention me, I'd be like, dang, I can't believe I'm even close to those names. So I'm very blessed, and thank you very much. That means the world.
Absolutely.
Crazy stuff. But yeah, I think Keith is going to win his 50th in a row. That'd be my vote. No, I don't think he's won 50 in a row, but he's won a lot over the last 25 years, and they've all been deserving. But I think that's going to wrap it up. Next week is going to look different just because it's going to be after going to be leading into the Big 12 championship, and we're going to know a lot and also a little at the same time, and that's going to be where it's all going to be broken down right here on Bigger Than 12. Thank you to everyone who has been with us every step of the way, or thank you to everyone who tuned in for the first time tonight or anywhere in between. We appreciate your support. Follow, like, subscribe, leave a review, and tell your friends. This has been Bigger Than 12 on Iowa Everywhere.